away that the only flag that will fly over Indian territory would be the Indian tricolor.
That's right. The tricolor only. We had an agreement that the occupied territories would be immediately transferred to the administrative committee of the occupied territory of the provincial government of India.
According to General Fujiwara, after the Japanese occupation of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, control of the territories was transferred to the Azad Hind government under the terms of the agreement.
General, would you kindly give me an example that Netaji never had any personal ambition?
Yes. The conversation between Netaji and General Tojo at the time of the Greater East Asian Conference in November 1943 was an example. When General Tojo said, "You are all in free India," Netaji said, "No." He said that leader in India would be decided by the Indian people. If there are only person who deserves to be called leaders in India, they are Gandhi, Nehru, and Azad.
I pray that Nippon's role in the creation of a new and free Asia may be fully and finally consummated. And let me assure Your Excellency that if you and your distinguished colleagues succeed in this highest mission of mankind, as I hope, I trust, and I believe you will, your names will go down in history, not merely as the makers of a new Nippon, not merely as the makers of a new East Asia, not merely as the makers of a new Asia, but as the makers and the architects of a new world.
Subhash Bose knew and honored every individual member of the INA. He maintained contacts with every individual of the army. He displayed effective leadership by establishing rapport with every one of them. He did not hesitate to honor them on every available occasion. All this endeared him to the army, and they were ready to follow him to a man. But the tide of war was turning in the Far East. The Japanese army was wilting under the determined attacks of the British, who had now been joined by the Americans in the Malayan theater of war. The aim of the INA was very clear: to reach the homeland at any cost. No sacrifice was great. Thus, Indian soil was dyed red with the blood of the Indian soldiers who fell wherever they charged the enemy. At Moirang Kangla, April 14th, 1944, the Indian tricolour was hoisted by the INA. British and American forces began to gain ground, and the beleaguered Japanese began to retreat. In the wake of the terrible war that was fought, arson and loot became common occurrences. Finally, the atom bomb was dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the war came to an end. The Japanese signed the instrument of surrender. In Singapore, Earl Mountbatten declared,
"As I speak, there are 100,000 men ashore. This invasion would have taken place on the 9th of September, whether the Japanese had resisted or not. I wish to make this plain. The surrender today is no negotiated surrender. The Japanese are submitting to superior forces now massed here."
And as for the INA, that valiant band of freedom fighters found themselves abandoned and imprisoned. The men of the British Indian Army, by an ironical twist of fate, were given the task of holding these men prisoners. But the fire burned bright in their eyes. They had been ready to fight until not a drop of blood remained in their veins. The defeat of the Japanese had halted them in mid-stride. At the Red Fort in Delhi in 1945, the leaders of the INA, Shahnawaz, Dillon, and Sehgal, were charged with treason. Colonel Dillon of the INA spoke on the character of the freedom movement, of which the INA was only a trigger.
I asked Netaji that as we and our allies appear to have lost the war, and there